Yeah. Shalom. Alright. First and foremost, I give all praise to Yahweh, Hashem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Alright. Peace and salutation to all you Akim who are just pushing this word and this truth. Alright, now I'm going to bring it up. This is live. What's going on right now in Charlotte. Alright.
It's also absurd. This is a rising fascist threat that Russians know very well what fascism really looks like, given that they are the ones who almost single-handedly defeated the Nazis. They're not about protesting, okay? Richard Spencer calls for peaceful ethnic cleansing. That's like calling for a peaceful genocide. These people want to commit. That's all there is to it. And they want to hide behind the First Amendment. But the First Amendment does not give you the right to incite violence. This is a rising fascist threat. This is like going back to the early days of the Nazi Party and saying like, well, you know, we should support their right to free speech. We may not agree with it, but they have a right to say it. Content does matter, and you're not allowed to say anything and anything, right? You're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. These people are promoting genocide.
A little earlier, President Trump gave a statement condemning the violence in Charlottesville and calling on Americans to show unity.
We're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time. It is no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives.
So there we have the president saying that this has been going on for a long time, this sort of division in the country, that America is really anything but united. And then here we have this incident today. And what's interesting to note is even before the car plowed into the crowd of protesters, there had been a state of emergency declared in the area. There was a heavy police presence with more than 1,000 officers estimated to have been there. The police were in riot gear. The Virginia National Guard was present, and so it's not fully clear how this happened, how it was possible that this was allowed to happen. We know that they were trying to break up the protesters, that the assembly had been declared as unlawful, but obviously when you have large groups of people, it's hard to just get them to leave and go home. But this original protest by the white nationalists was because there was plans to remove a Confederate statue, what some see as a racist symbol, from the city. And this isn't the first time we've seen an incident like this. Back in May, down in New Orleans, there was plans to remove, they actually did remove a Confederate statue in the city, and they actually did it there at night in order to avoid such large turnout of protesters during the removal. There were still protesters there, but they did do it at night in order to avoid what they feared could be violent protests such as this. And frankly, we've just seen a lot of division here in the United States on both sides of the party, on both sides of the aisle, the political aisle. We've seen comedian Kathy Griffin doing a photo shoot holding up a bloody severed head that was meant to resemble the president. She regretted having done that later on. She said that she had gone too far, but many accused her of eliciting violence with that sort of stunt. We've had plays here gone on in New York City that depicted, again, the president being killed in the end. So we've seen just a lot of division here, and this is just one more incident we're seeing today where one person has already been confirmed to have been killed by the incident today and many more injured. It's possible that the body count may rise. Obviously, we hope not, but anything's possible at this point.
Okay, let's bring in a guest now. Michael Malouf, former Pentagon official, joins me on the line. I wish it was under better circumstances, sadly, Michael. I just want to talk first about what exactly has happened today. I got into a heated debate with a guest earlier who was adamant that this was a deliberate attack, and a lot of people use a kind of an Occam's razor. They see a car ploughing into people and they immediately will say that this is tantamount to a terrorist attack. They might be right. There are also incidents, though, where that wasn't deliberate for numerous reasons. I always believe as a journalist that we just have to be cautious in these circumstances until we know for certain. What was your take on what you've seen?
Well, it's an unfortunate development what happened. It's only about 2.5 hours from where I live. Charlottesville is from the Washington area where I am. It started off as a local incident of removal of a statue, as you pointed out, but this has had the effect of galvanizing an already polarized country, if you will, of the radical left and the radical right. And that's what we're seeing here, and it manifested itself in this display. Now, you're absolutely right about the car that plowed into the 19 people, one of whom is unfortunately dead now. There is another report that suggests that the car was going down the street and people on the sides of the street were pelting rocks, and the car accelerated to get out of the way and then backed up in an effort to escape. Now, again, all of this is preliminary. It's still subject to further investigation. They do have the individual in custody who drove the car. But this really reflects the deep divisions that have occurred in the United States and have been for some time. And I think the election of Donald Trump, of course, helped magnify and manifest this, because they still have not accepted the fact that he won this election. And you're going to have people, particularly from out of state, come in as they have in other demonstrations and actually be paid professional demonstrators. And this is what I believe has begun to occur in Charlottesville.
I mean, we know about the violent tendencies and history of the far right. What about those on the left who are very quick to say that this is all the responsibility of those on the right? Others suggest that, including Donald Trump today, saying there was blame on both sides. Do you believe that, as you were suggesting it there, that basically this is being done sometimes for political gain?
Oh yeah, I think this is all political. You have ever since the United States calling for themselves in the cloak of righteousness that about free speech and what have you. That's the interesting thing about Charlottesville. That was the home to Thomas Jefferson. He was one of the originating writers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It is, and it's right. It's okay for people to protest, and that's the beauty of our Constitution. People can protest, but when it gets violent, then you have to take concerted action to quell it. And that's what's occurring right now, and in a very responsible way, I might add. But it does reflect a deeper polarization in the United States that is occurring, and only because Trump won, and people do not want that man to succeed in his agenda, even going so far as wanting to work issues with Russia on a myriad of areas, and so this you have, as I said, people coming in from the outside who are absolute right-wing types. They're still fighting the war of the U.S. Civil War in some respects, and you saw Confederate flags flying. Totally, in some areas, it's outlawed. But I think that they're more of a minority because, in a prevalent way, Charlottesville and indeed all of Virginia believes in equal rights, and you have people who are aghast by what has occurred, and the majority of the folks, both in Charlottesville and elsewhere, do not share these extreme sentiments, whether from the left or the right.
We know, to an extent, what we're going to be dealing with when there are protests like this. We know these are people on the far right who are demonstrating, who have called for violence. And we know that there are going to be people on the left who are determined to stand up to these these fascists as they see them. The authorities know all about this in advance. How is this able to actually happen? The violence kicked off much earlier in the day prior to this car ploughing into those people. The authorities had National Guard on the ground. They had anticipated it. Why were they not able to stop this from happening in the first place? And the suggestion from some sources and several guests we've had is that the local police in particular are very reluctant, that suggesting maybe they are sympathetic to some of the far-right protesters.
Well, I think